Well, hello, everyone. Happy Friday. We made it. We made it to another happy hour. We made it through another week. I'm going to be honest, guys. It has been one heck of a week, one heck of a day. Naruto in with the early super chat. Are you doing effed up news on Sunday? You never made the preview post? I know, Naruto. I know. I apologize. I was an effed up news preview post slacker this week. There is no preview post in locals, but that doesn't mean we won't have effed up news. We will absolutely have effed up news. I apologize for not making the post. It has been like one of the, has anyone else had one of those weeks? Like, I don't even know, man. But if you post in locals, if my local supporters have effed up news stories, please feel free to just make your general post in locals. I will be scrolling through there. I apologize for my slackery. I was gonna do it yesterday and I just like ran out of time in getting my running around to get my tattoo finished. Doesn't it look pretty? Can I tell, it hurt so bad. This is my 10th tattoo. I am not new to tattoos. I've been getting tattooed for 20 years. This was my 10th tattoo, and I almost tapped out yesterday. That's how painful this tattoo was. And the reason it was painful is because it was the third session of the tattoo, and he was going over stuff he had just done like a month ago to add extra emphasis and black and all that. And it looked so sick, but it was so painful. And I'm going to be honest, I didn't really sleep. The reason I didn't get that much done today is because I didn't really sleep last night because I feel like I have a massive road rash on my arm. Listen, man, this is the price we pay for beautiful, beautiful ink. So it's been a little bit of a weird day. I've just been very tired. I haven't had as much energy, but that doesn't mean we're going to let happy hour that doesn't mean we're going to let happy hour go. We're still going to do happy hour. We're still going to do effed up news on Sunday. Don't worry about any of that. But before we get into our show for today, actually, well, no, let me show you what we're watching today. Let me show you that. Let's start there. Today, we are going to be watching the Math Equity Toolkit, a pathway to equitable math instruction. Now, I thought that this would be a nice follow-up to what we watched last week in terms of, if you guys didn't see last week's happy hour, you've got to go back to watch last week's happy hour. You have to. It was one of the most insane happy hours that we have ever had. And one of the reasons that it made it insane is because the director of math for the public schools in Philadelphia was talking about equity in math class and was talking about like tree equity, where some parts of the city of Philadelphia have better trees than others, and they were teaching tree equity in math class or some such bullshit. It was insane. And so I thought a nice follow-up to that would be, let's just watch a whole anti-racist math teacher training webinar. So I went and found this one. This is called the Math Equity Toolkit. Let me read the description of it. This webinar will introduce a pathway to equitable math instruction. But I thought critical race theory wasn't taught in K through 12 schools. A toolkit of resources that were developed by math teachers, coaches, professional development providers, and language development specialists to support teachers in their journey towards anti-racist instruction. The focus of this webinar will be Stride 1, Dismantling Racism in Mathematics Instruction, which provides educators with a framework and a learning cycle to transform traditional approaches into anti-racist practices. Now, as a reminder, if you are new to my channel or if you're new to Happy Hour, anytime we say equity, equity is pretty much inextricably linked with critical race theory. They're not exactly the same. But you can't really teach critical race theory without equity, and you can't really teach equity without critical race theory. Equity is one of those things that the woke left tries to change the name. They try to use the term equity when they're just trying to be inclusive, and we're just trying to include everyone. But we all know, because we watch Happy Hour every week, and every single person who watches Happy Hour knows more about critical race theory than the average conservative pundit, we know because we watch Happy Hour every week that equity means equality of outcomes. It is a fundamentally Marxist philosophy that leads us all to ending at the same place. This is not to be confused with equality, which is equality is about equality of opportunity, not judging people by the color of their skin, but rather judging them by the content of their character, making sure we have as many opportunities available for as many people as possible, which is fundamentally different than equity because in a society built on equity, it is impossible for any individual person to achieve their greatness. Because when everyone has to come out at the same outcome, that means no one can be exceptional at anything. So, by its very definition, if you are infusing equity into math class, that means that our next great mathematical genius will never be able to emerge because they've literally been taught in an environment in which everyone has to level out at exactly the same place. That is the entire purpose and definition of what equity is. So we're going to watch today and we're going to figure out how they're teaching this math equity nonsense. Naruto says China had a Uyghur do the Olympic torch lighting. Oh, I heard that. The gall of those people. And freaking, well, who was it doing the announcing? Savannah Guthrie basically reading a script on American television that was obviously written by the Chinese government. I mean, come on, man. Come on. So that's what we're going to be watching today. But before we get into our webinar, of course, we have a couple orders of business. Now, I issued a challenge to my locals community earlier today. I issued a challenge. I thank you, Rational Mirror, in my locals. Rational Mirror has been doing a great job of investigating webinars that we can watch together for Spy Stream. If you didn't watch Spy Stream last week, basically I got wind of a leftist teacher complaining training webinar where they were complaining about parents at school board meetings, and I ended up getting myself invited to it. And of course, when I get myself invited to a leftist webinar, I'm going to stream it, and we called it Spy Stream because we were spying on the enemy. Now, Rational Mirror was very inspired by this, and he has been doing some investigating to find other webinars we can watch, and he found this one: Elementary Teaching for Equity and Justice. And unfortunately, this is not a free webinar. So here is the deal that I'm making. If I can get 5 new annual members in my locals community, then I'm going to purchase access to this webinar or this series called Elementary Teaching for Justice and Equity. And we're going to do some Spy Stream. So the good news is that I have already, since posting this challenge in my locals today, I have already gotten 3, count them 3, new annual members in locals. But if you want to help, hang on. Let me stop for a second. Let me pull up the actual screen. I forgot to add it. Oh no, I want to make sure I'm adding the right one. If you want to see that webinar, if you want to participate in Spy Stream with us, then what you need to do is oh my god, there it is I need you to become an annual member of my locals community. I need 2 more before I purchase this webinar. You can become an annual member of my locals community by heading over to kb.locals.com/support. Check out this here annual membership, and it's $50 for the entire year, which saves you 2 months. The monthly membership is $5 a month, which is pretty good already. Like, let's be honest, like it's pretty affordable for everyone. But if you get the annual membership for $50, that gives you 2 months for free. Now, I need 2 more annual members before I purchase access to that webinar. And if you are currently a monthly supporter and you upgrade to an annual membership, that will count as well. So you do that by heading over to kb.locals.com/support and signing up as an annual member. Yep, Spirit Matter. Exactly. If you're a monthly member, you can just switch over to annual. It's perfect. It saves you a little bit of money. It, provides me with the resources to be able to purchase the dang webinar. So it's a win-win for everyone. Now, if you're not sure about my locals yet, head over to just kb.locals.com. You don't have to go to the support thing if you're not quite ready. If you're like, Carlin, what is this locals community? What value am I going to get out of locals? You can sign up for free, man. You can join the community for free at kb.locals.com. What that will do is it will give you access to my videos that are ad free. It'll give me a way to contact you in case I get a stupid YouTube strike. You're going to be able to see what's going on in the community, what we're doing in there. But if you want to unlock all the features, you do need to be a supporter. The features include access to the 2 Zoom calls I do every single week, access to Bitchcraft, access to book club. We got a great book club coming up, access to my supporter only Discord. We've got lots of cool stuff going on in Locals. I don't have the biggest community on Locals, but I do absolutely have the best community. And I've got lots of members in the chat here today, and they can answer your questions and tell you all about it. But it really is my local Zoom calls. We do them on Mondays at 7 p.m. Eastern and Wednesdays at noon Eastern. They're the best parts of my week. Love them. Love them. All right. The other thing you can do if you want to help me out is you can head over to activelyunwoke.com. Make sure you pre-order a copy of my book. Now, I did have a call with the publisher this week. The publisher is very happy with the pre-order numbers that we're seeing. And let's just click on, I don't know if the Kindle version is available yet. If the Kindle version is not available yet, it will be soon. No, it looks like it's still just the hardcover on pre-order, but the Kindle version will be available very, very, very soon. If you don't like Amazon, that's okay. You can go to this non-Amazon pre-order options. And let's see, you can get it from Simon and Schuster, you can get it from Barnes and Noble, Books a Million, you can get it from IndieBound. So lots of different places that you can pre-order my book. I'm really excited about it. We've got lots of cool stuff going on. Next week on Friday, I believe, we have a webinar with Nicole Solis, who's going to teach us all about how to write public records requests. I think that this is one of the most important webinars that we can watch. Honestly, I'm really looking forward to it. And if you missed my webinar that I gave this past week about understanding critical race theory, all you need to do right now, I haven't updated the website yet, which actually works out well for you guys, because all you need to do is click into this and you'll be able to watch the recording of the webinar. So that is available for you now as well. I think the webinar went really well. There were about 300 people on it. I was very, very happy with it. People were really receptive to what we were talking about. A lot of people were really shocked about what we were talking about because they don't watch Happy Hour every week. But I was pretty excited about it. And so if you want to see the recording, just go over to activelyunwoke.com, click on the webinar. It'll take you right to a landing page that should, fingers crossed, have a recording on it for you to watch. Emphasize, thank you for the super chat. Here's some math for you. They aren't allowed to interrogate our children or ask about income. They found a loophole. Let's play a game, privilege walk. The children are required to tell how much money their parents spend. Well, emphasize, in social emotional learning, they do actually do surveys where they do ask about, maybe not direct, they don't ask specifically like how much, like what is mom and dad's income, because a lot of kids don't know, quite frankly, but they will ask, do mom and dad have a job, things like that. But yeah, they find loopholes to this stuff all the time, and that's why it's so important to watch Happy Hour, because Happy Hour is the thing that gives us the tools to be able to identify what they're teaching, how they're teaching it, in a way that you just can't if you haven't watched a lot of this content. All right. I think that's all I have before we get started, except, of course, I need a beer. Now, I didn't get a chance to go to the beer store. The weather was really crappy in New Hampshire today. It was like sleeting and wintry mix and all this stuff. But I did stop by the store yesterday after I got my tattoo, and I just got an old standby. Now, Guinness generally is not a bad mass market beer. I don't think Guinness is bad. Guinness is one of these beers that, what I really like about Guinness is that you can mix it with things. So if you've never had, like, one of my favorite drinks of all time is it's sometimes, some places call it a snake bite, some places call it a black velvet, some places call it a black velveteen. But what it is it's Guinness mixed with hard cider. So good. It's so good. You can mix Guinness with pretty much anything. You can mix Guinness with like Blue Moon. You can mix Guinness with like Yingling to get like a black and tan, or like maybe a Sam Adams Boston Lager. That'll give you with black and tan. You can mix Guinness with like a blueberry beer. That's really rad. This one today, though, isn't a regular Guinness. I've never had these before. It's a nitro cold brew coffee Guinness. And so I thought, I haven't had one of these. Why not? Why not? So let's give it a try. Oh, goodness. Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, no. It's going everywhere. Oh, of course, I have to have it in my wine glass because we're bougie. We're bougie. My big wine glasses are dirty, so I have to have a medium wine glass. I've never had this one before. We're gonna see. It's a nice. What I like about Guinness too is they do the nitro cans, and so it does come out. Look at that, perfect. Look at how pretty that is with the nitro. All right, let's see. It looks nice and creamy, nice and frothy. Let's see. That is delightful. It really is. That's delightful. Guinness. That is a delightful beer. I think I might actually like that better than normal Guinness. Wow, I love it when a plan comes together. All right. Let's get our math equity toolkit up. Who's ready to start happy hour for the week? Go ahead and chat in if you're ready to get this party started. Math equity toolkit, share audio. Of course I have to adjust my headphones because I always universally forget to change the sound to through my headphones before I start streaming. Always, every week, without fail. All right, we're ready to go. Let's see if we're ready on Odyssey. Looks like we are. Let's see if we're ready on Rockfin. We are. Let's learn us how they're teaching anti-racist math, guys. Let's do it. As always, let me know if the sound is offensive in any way.
Wonderful. I want to welcome everybody who's joining us this morning, actually going into this afternoon, for our second webinar in the Open for Anti-Racism series. And I'm just thrilled to have some of the developers of the Math Equity Toolkit with us, which was a project out of Education Trust West. And Education Trust West, and I'm I apologize. I attend your webinars, Rachel. I'm on your email list, and yet I'm not sure if I can describe exactly what Education Trust West is. It's an advocacy research group around equity in education, really at all sectors. But did that capture it? And just doing really exciting work.
That was a great description, Una. Thank you.
All right, we'll share a link later for the for your site as well.
Guys,
And
how's my sound compared to the
Education
webinar? Is
Trust
that okay?
West is one of 4 centers, I believe, around the country, all focused on advocacy and equity in education. All right, Liz, next slide, please. Let's see.
Okay. Thank you,
No
Spirit
worries.
Matter.
I'm going to introduce our amazing speakers here in just one second. But we do want a little call out to the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation, who has been supporting this anti-racism project and is really a leader in open education, equity, and anti-racism, not only in education, but really society-wide. And our focus today is the Math Equity Toolkit, which is a really exciting project around making equitable classrooms, starting first with the teachers and their need to really reflect on who they are, what they bring to the classroom, what might be their implicit biases, and how to really work with their students that, who may be this.
So I want to say something about implicit bias. Because has anyone ever taken the Harvard implicit bias test that's supposed to test your implicit bias towards Black people? I have. I was judged by the Harvard test to have no implicit bias at all. But the reason I think that is because I'm like super dexterous because of all the knitting. And so all the Harvard implicit bias test is like how quickly you're able to basically play a video game. That's it. That's all it tests. If you are dexterous from like knitting or video games, you're going to be able to pass the Harvard anti-bias test or implicit bias test with absolutely no problems. And even the creators of that test have since come out and admitted that it doesn't actually measure anything. Now, every single one of us is going to have what these people would call implicit biases. What they're usually talking about is biases that exist in our subconscious that we are not aware of for some reason, but they seem to think that the only implicit biases that we have are around skin color. That's just not true. Human beings can have implicit biases towards any number of things. So if you were ever like if you were a kid and you got attacked by a dog, or like a big mean dog came up and like barked in your face and you were like really terrified when that happened, you might have an implicit bias for the rest of your life towards dogs that you might not even be aware of. But every time you walk by a dog, you're going to get nervous and scared because you had that really bad experience as a kid and it was deeply traumatic and it embedded itself in your psyche and all that. Yeah, Sin says I have an implicit bias against spiders. Dude, I've got a massive implicit bias towards spiders, and I'll tell you exactly when it happened. It was when I was a kid, and I remember this moment. This is not even like an unconscious bias. I know exactly why I'm biased towards spiders. It's because I was a kid and I woke up one day and there was a giant black effing spider sitting on my chest looking at me, and I was terrified. And ever since then, if I see a spider, like I remember there was a stream like maybe like a year ago or so where a black spider started to crawl across my wall and I screamed on the stream and yelled for Victor to come up and do man's work and kill the goddamn spider. I have an implicit bias towards spiders. You might have if you had like an uncle that you really didn't like as a kid and he always wore like red sweaters or something. You might have an implicit bias towards people with red sweaters. We all have implicit unconscious biases based on things that have happened in our lives. And it is not just about skin color. Usually it has nothing to do with skin color. And these people have no evidence that there is actually like a disproportional amount of implicit bias based on skin color. There is zero evidence that that actually exists. So that's my rant about implicit bias. It is not a real thing. Well, no, it is a real thing, but it is not a measurable thing. It's not measurable in any way because it's an unconscious bias. Most people are not aware that they have it.
Same as them or not, but it's it really, that process, that learning cycle, I think is what Danny and Rachel would call it, and that's what they're going to tell us about today. Okay, next slide, please. So I want to start by introducing Danny Wadlington. Danny brings more than 13 years of field experience, 2 Masters of Arts degree in education and educational leadership from some of the countries, and I must say from some of California's top universities. She's a master math teacher.
California's top
Helping
universities.
to
Oh
close the
my.
gap in numeracy acquisition for many students of color. And in fact, if it's okay for me to mention, Danny, she is a local high school teacher here in the Bay Area, as well as one of the leaders, perhaps the co-founders of Quetzal Education Consulting. And she's also an experienced West African dance teacher. She uses the interconnectedness of rhythm, movement, and math in order to engage her students and help them own their math identities.
Did they just say that this woman uses skills that she'd learned from being a West African dance instructor to teach math? Now, the reason I bring that up is not just because it's crazy. I'm detangling my yarn from my microphone cord if you guys are wondering what I'm doing. So the reason that that's, a crazy coincidence is not just that she's teaching West African dance in math class, which, listen, man, I have no problem with West African dance. Don't really care. I don't care about any type of dance. I'm not a dancer. But we read on my primary channel several months ago, we actually read an anti-racist math teacher training textbook. And I shit you not, in that anti-racist math teacher training textbook, it actually suggested that math class be taught through interpretive dance. They suggested in the anti-racist math teacher training textbook that is used currently in high schools in St. Louis. I know for a fact it's used in St. Louis because I got it from a teacher in St. Louis. They actually advised in that textbook to teach math by teaching students interpretive song and dance. And so I think it's a little bit ironic that in the anti-racist math teacher training webinar, we already have a West African dance instructor who apparently is going to advocate for teaching math via dance. All right. Emphasize, if you don't tell us how much money your parents spend, you are a racist phobe. Well, it is what it is, I suppose. Emphasize. Let's keep going.
So thank you, Danny. Would you like to say a few words before we jump in?
Yeah, I think you got it. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you for being here. And next up is Rachel Ruffalo. I hope I pronounced that correctly. She is the Director of Educational Engagement, or Educator Engagement, I should say, at Education Trust West, located in Oakland, California. And her career in education spans more than 20 years, serving as a teacher, new school developer, school leader, consultant, researcher, and advocate. And throughout this, she's been committed to pursuing equity and social justice. She was a first generation college student and experienced the transformative power of education within her own family. As the director of educator engagement, she works with school districts through a multi-year process that involves mixed methods research study to identify opportunity gaps and systemic inequities. And the Math Equity Toolkit is an example of that. Rachel holds a master's in educational policy organization.
Oh, I forgot to do bingo. You guys can play bingo if you want. It's in the description below. I don't think this is going to be a good bingo day. I think I probably forgot bingo because intuitively I don't think it's going to be a good bingo day, but you're welcome to play bingo. It is in the chat below. But I just wanted to say, what did I want to say? Oh God, I had another point I wanted to make and I forgot. God damn it. I apologize. If it's a good point, it'll come back to me. Adam Kinney says, I'll bet they're good at adding 0 or multiplying by 1 because they know all about identity. Well, I'm going to bet they're not very good at it, and they're going to deflect teaching math, this entire thing, but we'll see how it goes. We will. Guys, mount that like button if you haven't already, and if you're not yet subscribed to my channel, I hope that you shall. We do happy hour every week at 5 on Actively Unwoke, and yeah, let's keep going.
And leadership studies from Stanford, and a master's in education and teaching and curriculum from Harvard. So thank you, Rachel. Would you like to say anything before we jump in?
I think you got it. Thank you.
Okay. You both have such impressive resumes. I'm sorry if I got tongue-tied there. All right, next slide, please, Liz. So for those of you who might be new to the Community College Consortium, we have been around for over a decade now. We were founded right here in Northern California, but we are a national organization. We work with faculty in supporting their professional development, to find and adopt open educational resources and practices in order to help students be successful and to reduce equity gaps. And so this particular project is really an example of that. Next slide, please, Liz. All right, so very quickly, and I'm sorry, my internet seems to have been a little slow there. So for those of you who haven't heard of the Open for Anti-Racism project, I hope most of you have. I know that we have our faculty cohort, which is we hope our first faculty cohort going through this process. And it's a one-year program to explore how faculty can use OER and open pedagogy to make their instructional materials and their teaching practices more anti-racist. Our faculty cohort, there are 17 of them from regionally dispersed California community colleges. You can see that it covers a wide range of disciplines, from administration of justice through sociology, social work, chemistry, math, etc. So really spanning just a wide set of disciplines. And we're so interested to see how the open pedagogy and OER works within different disciplines. And, I know in talking with Rachel and Danny about math, we had a discussion around how, sometimes when you come to teachers initially and say math may not be taught in an equitable manner, it may not be inclusive, and they're like, well, it's all about numbers. I mean, what does numbers have to do with equity?
Exactly.
And
yes.
So I think we will hear a lot
what
more
do numbers
about
have
why
to do
that's
with
so
equity?
important, why teaching math is a key example of the need for equitable thought. All right, next slide, please, Liz.
If they say 2 + 2 = 5 in this webinar, we get a free bingo
Okay.
square.
So I'm going to just give a brief introduction, and then we are going to go directly to our presenters here. So the Math Equity Toolkit, it's a toolkit of resources that were developed by really
That's
teachers,
I think
practitioners.
this is the book that we read. I think this Dismantling Racism in Mathematics Instruction is the book that we read. I'm pretty sure it's the same book. So this will be a nice review of our anti-racist math curriculum that we've already discussed on my other channel. Fantastic. We've already done the work on anti-racist math, and now we get to see it in practice, or possibly in praxis.
Coaches, professional development providers, and language development specialists, although we're not going to focus on that one particularly today, but I think that's a really fascinating piece as well. And it's all about supporting teachers in their journey towards anti-racist instruction and helping their students to be successful. And there were 5 strides, and I think Rachel will give us a little overview around that. Today, we're focusing on dismantling racism in mathematics instruction, which is the first stride. And there's a lot of resources online to support your further investigation of this. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Rachel and Danny.
Thank you so much, Una, for the introduction and for the invitation to join you in your cohort and other guests today. I'm just going to share my screen.
Couldn't she go into a private room to present?
So as Una mentioned, we typically share this with mathematics instructors. And
that's the same book. That is the same book that we read on my channel. Holy shit. What a nice surprise. We've already read the book. That is exactly the same book we read on my channel.
We're just thrilled today to have an opportunity to talk more generally.
Perhaps they'll give us more information about how you teach math with interpretive song and dance, and how so here's what I remember from this book. Do you guys remember the rant I did with Joshua, trying to tell Joshua about anti-racist math? That was a good rant. That was one of my can you guys grant me a point of personal privilege? Can we watch the it's like 3 minutes long, the rant I did to Joshua after reading this anti-racist math textbook? Do you guys mind if I find that? Hang on, I'm going to find it. I'm pretty sure it's going to be easy to find. It was like 3 minutes long. But I just want to give you that rant to Joshua was like the best summation I feel like is necessary for everything you need to know about what was in this anti-racist math teacher training textbook, because it is crazy. It is crazy. Hang on, I'm looking up for the video real quick. Oh, I found it. It was so quick. Okay. So this is a 1 minute long rant that I did. There's a commercial. And while that commercial is going, I'm going to switch over. I mean, we wouldn't want people who weren't privileged to watch the 3-hour stream I did reading the anti-racist math textbook too. We wouldn't want people to feel like they're on the back foot. Okay? Everyone needs to be brought up to speed on what is actually in this anti-racist math textbook. So this is me explaining what's going on. Hang on, let me just fast forward through this, and I'm going to get to right where Joshua and I start. Oh, it's a long rant. Never mind. That's okay. It's longer than I thought. That's all right. Okay. Okay, here we go. Here is the anti-racist teacher training textbook rant from back in August. Dragonwater asks, from a psychic perspective, are the efforts to fight CRT having positive effect towards breaking the hold it has on institutions? I'm very loud. Good question.
Is the fight against CRT going
to have a positive effect towards breaking the hold it has on institutions?
And tell me to stop shuffling.
Stop.
The Fool, 3 of Discs, 7 of Cups. So with the Fool card, I think that really it's a matter of like what resists persist, right? So it's sort of like waking up every morning and being like,
different hats, gold. This
I'm
one's
fat.
gold. That's pink.
And you wake up every morning, you're like, I'm fat, right? And then it's like, well, if you keep saying that you're fat, you're going to perpetuate being fat because you're still in the vibration of being fat. So the same thing I think with like CRT, like what we resist persists. So the fight against it is not necessarily the best mode of getting traction. However, with 3 of Discs, we do have some work in that realm of stuff actually getting done. But with 7 of Cups, it's a matter of there's a dissolving of it because of, again, focusing on the problem perpetuates the problem. What I've always said in regard to CRT from a spiritual perspective is why are we not replacing this with something else? So it's sort of like, you make mashed potatoes wrong. You make mashed potatoes wrong. You make mashed potatoes. Well, then you're not giving me another option.
So just so you guys know, when I cocked my head like that, I was like, that's when I'm preparing the rant. That's what I'm like. Joshua does not have the full context of the situation, and I'm about to give him the full context of the situation.
Like, how should I be making my mashed potatoes? So we still have shitty mashed potatoes because we're not getting.
I'm getting prepared.
An alternative. So
the alternative is if you teach real history, not made up history. That is the alternative. This is the problem. It's like you can't they made up history. They made up a whole academic course of study and then ingrained it in everything. The only alternative is to actually teach things that actually happened, like used to happen in schools. That is the only alternative. And I understand what you're saying because I've said, and I wrote about this in the book, is like you need to have like a vision for people to move towards.
Right.
And I agree with that. But it's also like hard when it comes to schools because it's like, can't we just go back to the old way of teaching history? Because that seemed to work pretty well. Because it was actually real. It wasn't made up nonsense in which we were talking about feelings. And Joshua, I did a 2-hour live stream today about anti-racist math.
Math as in like
I read an 80-page teacher training manual training math teachers on how to be anti-racist. You know what some of the suggestions were? Why don't you have students sing songs and do interpretive dances about their feelings about math? I swear to God, the only alternative to that is you teach effing math.
So how is teaching math racist?
Exactly. This is why this is an entirely made up discipline.
Right. Well, I think the big thing is the state of the world, the way it's in regard to race relations, apparently people do not believe that that's effective enough. That's why we got the CRT. So I know you're saying
that's not why we got it. That's not why we got it. We got it because they want communism to take over our society. That's why. Communism. Yeah. Yes, is a Marxist ideology.
So I would say it just looks like there's a little bit of dissipation. And that's the thing. Like, I think with this card, it's like you want something grounded. Like 7 of Cups, just it dissipates. It's very like Pisces. It's very like moon type energy. It just sort of like dissolves. You know what I mean? So if we can get more earth, because there's a lot of energy that's being directed toward making it go away. But again, it dissolves unless we have something to sink our teeth into. So it's sort of like if other people are saying that the old way is not the best way, maybe there's some kind of compromise.
I'm winding up. There is no compromise when they're telling us to teach interpretive dance in math class as a way of learning math.
Math helps you solve problems. It really does.
All right.
Did you get it in math?
I was very good in math. I tested into advanced math as a young, like a 12-year-old or some such nonsense. So I took advanced math classes. But you know what I learned today in the anti-racist math textbook, Joshua?
What?
Is that if I had like, you know how math classes are like sequential? Like I took like algebra 1 and then algebra 2 and then pre-calculus and then calculus and then calculus 2. You know how there's like a sequence?
Yep.
What the anti-racist math teacher training textbook says is the sequence doesn't really matter. And if a student fails algebra 1, that doesn't mean they can't do great in algebra 2. It's white supremacist to think that a failure in algebra 1 might not lead to success in algebra 2. Literally said that, not making that up.
That's preposterous. How can you do algebra 2 if you can't master algebra 1?
Well, congratulations, you are a white supremacist.
I am. That's not good.
You're already a white man. Like you already had that like strike against you, and now you've asserted that someone actually has to pass one class before going on to a more advanced level in that class. Racist.
Wow.
All
Well,
right.
hopefully not all the teachers of the world are following into this.
See,
philosophy.
people wonder why I'm angry. It's because I read critical race theory all the goddamn time. This right here. Interpretive goddamn dance in math class. All right, let's keep going.
Can you not even tell? Can you also like be like, no, Johnny, sorry, you got the answer wrong. Like
No.
you can't say that. Like,
No, you can't do that because that is reinforcing objectivity, which is white supremacist.
but math is objective.
No, not anti-racist math. Anti-racist math, objectivity is white supremacist. You're not allowed to do that. We instead of saying no, and actually it's also there were also like 3 different violations that a teacher correcting a student like violated in terms of white supremacy. It was saying the teachers were, first of all, students are supposed to teach teachers in math class, not the other way around. And if you don't accept that, then you're a white supremacist. And it's also the only reason that you're not accepting that is because the teachers are trying to feel emotionally comfortable, and they're just uncomfortable when students teach them different ways of math. And also there is ethnocentric math, which means we have to do the math of our ancestors if we are not white, and that may not be the proper way to do math. So we have to accept doing the math of the ancestors, or we're white supremacists. I didn't make any of that up. That was all in the teacher training manual.
Wow, crazy.
This is the problem. 2-hour stream on it today. You guys can go back and watch. This is why I'm insane. This is why I'm angry all the time. All right, let's move on.
Let's move on.
So that is a pretty fair summation of what was in that anti-racist math teacher training textbook that this entire webinar that we are watching for happy hour today is based off of. I did not make any. Yeah, I know it was a rant and it was supposed to be funny and a little bit more casual, and Joshua was pulling tarot cards and stuff, but what I said to him about what was in that anti-racist math teacher training textbook, that was while it was still fresh in my head. I didn't make any of that up. That was all while it was still fresh in my head. I had just read the damn textbook. Those were the salient points from the anti-racist math teacher training textbook. And apparently, that same anti-racist math teacher training textbook is exactly the same one that they are using in this webinar. So now everyone's caught up to speed. Everyone knows the type of insanity that we are able to expect now. And I would just want to reassure everyone, I got a copy of this anti-racist math teacher training textbook from a teacher in St. Louis who was mandated to teach anti-racist math in high school. So I thought critical race theory wasn't in K through 12 schools. No, it isn't K through 12 schools. What we're going to be watching today is absolutely in K through 12 schools because I got it from a damn high school teacher. All right, let's move on.
About the process of developing this tool to support you all in your anti-racist work in your own context, and believe that that much of the content is likely applicable to your context as well. I'm going to try to, I see a spinning circle on my screen, so I'm going to.
Oh, she's already got the spinning wheel of death.
The slides.
There we go.
Did it advance? Okay, there we are. So you've already heard about us. So I'm going to click through this. And as Una said, the Education Trust West is a nonprofit educational equity organization focused on educational justice and closing achievement and opportunity gaps through research, data, policy analysis, and advocacy. And I would add to that also through practice. And so we do partner with practitioners throughout the state, through early childhood, through college. It's an important.
All right, we've got, your name today is Sticky Icky Ricky Murphy's Pool. I'm always going to call you Murphy's Pool, man. I am drinking a nitro cold brew Guinness, and it is delightful. And thank you for the super chat and the support. Guys, mount that like button, or as Sin might say, where did Sin say it? You can fortify the like button. You can caress the like button. You can do whatever you want to that like button as long as you have done something to that like button at some point.
Feedback loop to inform our policy and also to inform our research agenda. Oops. in my. Okay. I got shut down here. Okay, so apologize. Let me reopen the.
Leftists don't know how to do webinars. They don't know how the internet works.
The slides.
Yes, Sam. Yes, you can. If you want to, you can engage the
No
like button
worries.
in a struggle
Technology's
session.
always,
Absolutely.
You know,
Patrice pounced on
I
the
had
like
it
button.
all set up, and now my
You know,
computer
you can work out whatever feelings you have on that like
acting
button.
tired.
If you have feelings about my burner accounts on Twitter,
Let me
you can
see. I
work
can
them out
also
on the
share.
like button if
Let
you
me,
want to.
Okay. Yeah, that would be great, Danny.
Thanks, Danny. If I can get it back in time for your presentation, I can support you.
Okay, let me.
This is the moment when I always say, imagine what our students are going through, right?
It's a humbling and a good reminder. I think about that too, like how challenging it can be for adults.
For grades 6 through 8, including Algebra 1.
Okay. Thank you so much, Danny. So I'm just going to share a really brief overview of the toolkit generally, and then Danny's going to dive into really the heart of Stride 1, which I think is really aligned with the work of your cohort.
We don't judge what the like button wants. The like button wants what it wants.
Is made up of these
Nothing
5
wrong with
different
that.
tools that we call them strides, and they were collaboratively developed to support teachers in providing equitable access to grade level priority math standards. Our focal student groups are Black, Latinx, and multilingual students in grades 6 to 8, although we have found that the principles and the practices are really applicable beyond just grades 6 to 8 and really beyond just math. Next slide, please. So why is it needed? Well, we were approached because this was in late spring where we knew that teachers were going to need to make some strategic instructional decisions due to the pandemic and to the disruption to the school year. And as we started planning what this might look like to support teachers, we really couldn't ignore that the gaps in access to quality math instruction pre-existed the pandemic, and the conditions have just been exacerbated throughout this crisis. And so we really seized this opportunity as not just to be like a COVID response type of resource, but really an opportunity to transform math education and to really help educators to think about what they can.
So she just said that they utilized the pandemic as a way to transform math education. Now, why would this group want to utilize a worldwide tragedy and crisis in order to transform the way that math is taught? We talk every single week on Happy Hour about how critical race theory is not about race, it's about power. Their entire goal is to destabilize the system. What else could they be possibly seeking to do if they're trying to transform the way that math is taught using a worldwide pandemic as an excuse to do what they already wanted to do anyway? Never let a good crisis go to waste. Who said that? Obama's chief of staff? What's his name? Rahm Emanuel.
Can do in their own context to really be much more in tuned and responsive to the needs of students while being very cognizant of the systemic racism that exists and permeates all of our institutions and systems. So next slide, please. So we definitely could not have done this alone. We brought together a group of 35 amazing collaborators, including Danny, from all of these organizations, many county offices and universities here in California, as well as some national partners such as Unbound Ed and the English Learner Success Forum. We had teachers and coaches, researchers, professional development providers, really a wide range of perspectives and expertise. Next slide, please. We also grounded our work. So we had to work fairly quickly, and we brought together folks from all these different organizations. And so we wanted to ground our work in some guiding principles and foundational documents so that we could have coherence and some common themes and threads throughout all of the strides. And so not going to go into detail, but just offering this as I think an important approach to a complex task like supporting equitable and anti-racist instructional practices. So one of the if you can go to the next slide. The first principle was that equitable access to high quality standards aligned curriculum and instruction should be universal. So we used the instructional priority content from student achievement partners to help us, to help guide our work in what of the teaching, what content. The next slide. The second slide is, or the second principle is that barriers to equitable access to high quality curriculum are the result of structural racist and biased systems, not students' backgrounds, cultures, or family income. So as we think about the approach to the barrier is not the students, the barrier is the system. And so we really—
They're arguing that the only reason that schools might not have high quality math instruction is racism. That's what she's saying. Let's read that quote. "We are mathematics educators. We cannot look away or claim a privileged stance because we might prefer to believe mathematics is a culturally or politically neutral subject. All levels of teaching mathematics are imbrued with the same racism and violence that permeates all schooling." I'm just going to read that last sentence again because I think it's crazy enough that it needs to be read again. "All levels of teaching mathematics are imbrued with the same racism and violence that permeates all schooling." You know what? Listen, man, listen. If we believe that school is violence, then why don't we just defund public education right now? If these people actually believe that school is violence, you know what? I agree. Public schools are the one place that most people will absolutely experience violence in their lifetime. I 100% agree with that. Public schools are no different than prison for little people who are forced to go to public schools to learn whatever the state wants them to learn. And apparently the state, according to these people, is imbruing racism and violence into schooling. I agree. Let's fix systemic racism. Let's do it right now by defunding the damn schools. If the schools are obviously systemically racist and the schools are obviously imbruing racism and violence into all levels of schooling, then I think that the only answer to this is to stop giving them money to spread their violence and obvious racism. Let's read the rest of this quote. "We can no longer believe that a focus on curriculum and instruction and assessment alone will be enough to prepare our children for survival in the world. We need anti-racist conversations for ourselves and for our children. We could fix systemic racism in an instant by defunding public education."
Also relied on this position paper from Todos Mathematics for All that put some language to the moment that we are in and the opportunity to really rethink mathematics for this year and every year. And then the third principle is that beliefs and language about students and their families shape how adults view and teach students. And so we wanted to be very mindful of being assets oriented in our language, in our approach, and in our practices. And we relied and kind of based a lot of our work on the California English Learner Roadmap, especially principle number 1, assets oriented and needs responsive schools. And next slide, please. So our group, when we first began to put together the toolkit, we focused on the question of what are the barriers to equity? What is it that our toolkit is trying to support teachers to address? And we came up with many ideas, and I invite you to answer this question in your own context. What barriers to equitable instruction do your students experience? And I invite you to put in your response in the chat. As you do, thank you, Danny. As you think about that, I'll share some of the ones that our team came up with on the next slide. So we had many, and we found that they spanned instructional barriers. Some were structural, some were systemic, and we wanted to focus on barriers that teachers are have some control over in their context, and those who are supporting teachers. And so you'll see we have these 5 that we focused on that created the basis for each stride in the toolkit. And the first one, this acculturation of bias and racism in school systems and mathematics instruction, is the one that we'll be focusing on today with stride 1. The other 4 are really about teacher training and curricular supports and supports for teachers to shift instruction and to build their capacity to meet students' needs, both in language development and social, emotional, and academic development. And so those are all great strides as well, but we won't be focusing on them today. So this is the stride that Danny will be going into more detail, dismantling racism in mathematics instruction, but just want to share the titles of the other 4 strides with you so that you can, if they pique your interest or you know people who might benefit from looking at them, just want to make you aware of them. So stride 2 is fostering deep understanding. It's methods for deepening student conceptual understanding through orchestration.
We only read the first one on my channel. I didn't realize there were 4. We only read the first one on my channel. I don't know about any of these other ones.
We did math discussions that build on and connect multiple strategies. Again, the content is math, but really the practice could span various content areas. Stride 3 is about environments and practices that support students' social, emotional, and academic development. So this one is called Creating Conditions to Thrive. Stride 4 is the interconnectedness of English language learning and the development of mathematical thinking. This one is called Connecting Critical Intersections. So this is the one that really aligns English language development with math content and math practices.
So when they're teaching students who English is not their first language, they're not only teaching them how to speak English, they're also teaching them, like, infusing into their language activist and anti-racist bullshit. That's what this is about. They're trying to infuse activism into the instruction of the English language. And they may teach a little bit of math on top of it, but that's what they're talking about with this.
And stride 5
5?
is geared
I thought there were only
towards
4.
coaches and others who are supporting teachers in their growth, their professional growth.
I cannot.
And it's called Sustaining Equitable Practice, and it shares some coaching structures that support math educators in their ongoing centering of equity principles. Again, this would be completely applicable
It's
to
helping
any
math
teacher
teachers
who
to
is,
do the work, to be
wanting
anti-racist.
to go through some
This is for
reflective
teachers, not for
processes with a
students.
coach or a colleague. And there's some great resources in that stride 5.
Man.
So I'm going to share also the webpage, again, equitablemath.org, where you can download all of the strides or each individual stride or the whole toolkit. And that's area that's circled there on the next slide is a close-up of it. It is a, it's okay. It's a, there we go. It has the, we did webinars, we did deep dive webinars for each of the strides. And so you can access
they have the
recording from
recordings.
each of those
Excellent.
webinars. They were presented.
Excellent. They have recordings. Now, this webinar that we're watching is about a year old. So it's not a new thing that might not exist on their website anymore. But if anyone wants to, while we're watching this presentation, go take a gander around their website and try to find recordings, I wouldn't be opposed to that. Let me know if you find anything interesting, and maybe we can take a look at it in the future.
By the content developers of each stride. So those are great resources, and we encourage you to share them widely. And then I think the next slide is my transition to Danny, who will take you all in a deep dive into stride 1. I apologize for going so quickly, but I wanted to make sure to leave as much time for Danny to share. Thank you, Danny.
We don't want to center
Thank you.
whiteness,
Thank
do
you,
we?
Rachel. All right, so I am going to do a deep dive into Strad 1, but like Rachel said, the deep dive sessions that are on the website are really important, and I talk a lot more there about how to use the tool. So today I'm going to talk more about the purpose of the tool and like what you might learn from using the tool. But if you want to learn how to actually use the tool, you can check out that deep dive as well. So when we got invited to this project, or when I got invited to this project and thinking about the barriers that students face, I really did think about teacher beliefs and teacher biases and how that impacts learning, especially in the math classroom, because we know that the outcomes for math students are very racialized, and a lot of the approaches to math have been like, how do we do math better? And I think that
by
that's
teaching
great, right?
math, not by
need
teaching
to
dance.
teach and engage with math in very different ways. But if we don't actually address racism, then we can't deal with the racialized outcomes. So much of math takes kind of a colorblind approach to the way that we have done math reform, and that then just leaves better math, but not like, the question is for whom, right? So yes, we have access to a different kind of math, different ways of learning math, different ways of thinking about math, but if they still don't encompass like this idea of racism, then we haven't actually gotten to the root of the problem. We fixed maybe a symptom or how it might present itself, but as we know, there are still racialized outcomes. So we took a very racialized approach to how we wanted to go about addressing the barriers for Black, Latinx, and multilingual students. And what we did was we wanted to create a sort of action-based workbook.
Why don't they care about Asians? They only care about Black and Latinx students. Why don't they care about Asians?
To really examine their actions, beliefs, and values around teaching mathematics. And we chose a workbook approach because we know that some folks are not ready to do anti-racist.
Hang on. Spirit Matter says we can still watch their strides on Vimeo. We'll have to look into that later, Spirit Matter. I appreciate you looking into it.
This work, and you can't necessarily change their minds or their beliefs or their inherent biases in a lot of ways right at first. So we wanted to take an action-based approach because you can change folks' actions, and hopefully in the process we will change their hearts and minds. So we really wanted to start off by thinking about, how does racism show up in our math classrooms, right? Like, how does it actually show up? And so we know that white...
Hang on, I'm sorry. I need to take a screenshot of this. I'm sorry. I just have to. I'm sorry. White supremacist culture infiltrates math classrooms every day. I was called a white supremacist. So fun fact on Twitter today. So did anyone listen to the band Eve 6 in the 90s? I did. I loved Eve 6 in the 90s. There were a couple bands that like I really, really loved when I was in high school. Third Eye Blind was one of them. Eve 6 was one of them. And today on Twitter, I was actually getting into, so the singer of Eve 6 today is basically a communist. He's a communist, and I got into a little discussion with him and his fans on Twitter, and it was so funny because like I was actually getting him to engage with me. I was so excited. I was listening to his music because I was like, I'm gonna have a conversation with the guy that like I totally had a crush on in high school and is now like really ugly and old and a communist. But that's okay because I'm like reliving my high school fantasy out on Twitter right now. And so I engaged the guy in Eve 6 in a conversation because he was bitching and complaining about like Spotify, and apparently they've been going after Spotify, which I think is kind of funny. And so I actually got him to respond to me, but it was so funny because every time I was like, what, like, if you don't trust the music industry, then why do you trust the media, Max? And he responded to me. And then 2 seconds after he responded to me, he would delete his tweets. He would delete the evidence that he responded to me. But I say this because some of his fans started calling me a white supremacist. They're like, oh, it's this white supremacist grifter. And I was like, how am I a white supremacist? And they couldn't answer how I was a white supremacist at all. They just called me fat. When Eve Six's Singers fans couldn't answer how I was white supremacist, they were like, you know that you really need to take better care of yourself and lose some weight. And I was like, all right, okay. I was so bummed though that the singer he would tweet at me, he would retweet me with a comment, and then he would delete the tweet immediately. It was so disappointing. My high school fantasy was smashed. Thank you, Murphy's Pool. Lick the like button. Lick it. Lick it good. All right, back to anti-racist math.
White supremacy culture is a part of our everyday lives. It's a part of the fabric of how we walk the world, or not necessarily the world. Well, we can argue the world, but at least here in California and in our country, we live in a racialized society. And so if we aren't very clear about thinking about how white supremacy culture shows up, then we miss it, right? Because white supremacy culture is one of those things that just permeates. And we don't even realize it's invisibilized in a lot of ways. So we really wanted to visibilize how it shows up. And we wanted to make clear that it shows up in everyday teacher actions. It's not like, oh, I'm like a lot of teachers decide, oh, I'm going to be racist today. That's not a thing, right? Like people don't always do that. But we can still perpetuate white supremacy culture by engaging in what we might see as everyday typical math things. And for those of us who aren't also math teachers,
I literally just almost spit out my beer. I literally almost said, I almost spit out my beer when she said, we can engage in white supremacy culture by doing typical things like math. All right, let's go. We need to rewind. Sorry. Listen for it. Don't take a drink of anything. Just listen for it.
We wanted to make clear that it shows up in everyday teacher actions. It's not like, oh, I'm like a lot of teachers decide, oh, I'm going to be racist today. That's not a thing, right? Like people don't always do that. But we can still perpetuate white supremacy culture by engaging in what we might see as everyday typical math things. And for those of us who aren't also math teachers, I'm going to give us an opportunity to think about the ways that it shows up in math classrooms, but I'm sure you can read some of these and be like, oh, I actually do that in my class. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, on the next screen, here are what we saw as the ways that white supremacy culture show up in math classrooms.
Okay.
And I want you to take.
I can't read her screen at all on the stream, but I can kind of see it on the video. Okay, so the ways in which math might be white supremacist. So at the very top, she's got the focus is on getting the right answer. So if we're focused on getting the right answer in math class, congratulations, you might be a white supremacist. They've also got independent practice is valued over teamwork and collaboration. So if you when I was in school, I was one of those kids, I was really good at math, but I was like a loner. I do not like group projects. I do not like teamwork. I don't like that. I basically wanted to go off into a corner and do calculus and then handed my homework and go home because I'm like a massive introvert, right? And so based on her definition here, she says independent practice is valued over teamwork and collaboration. I guess I was a white supremacist for being an introvert in high school math class. Real world math is valued over. Okay, this third bullet point, I swear to God, I know you guys are it's a little small on the stream and I know that, but I swear to God, this third bullet point, right here, it literally says real world math is valued over math in the real world. That's literally what it says. Real world math is valued over math in the real world. How the hell are those two things different? How is real world math different from math in the real world? They literally have the same, it's literally the same words. They've just moved the order around. It means exactly the same thing. They've also got students are tracked into courses or pathways. So you know how in my rant with Joshua, I was like, if a student fails Algebra 1, it's racist to believe that they can't do Algebra 2. That's what they're talking about right there. That's what they're talking about. is they literally have students are tracked into courses or pathways within the classroom. Participation structures reinforce dominant ways of being. Teachers are encultured in the USA to teach mathematics the way they learned it. So if teachers teach math in the way that math is actually supposed to be taught, that's white supremacy. I told you guys this book was crazy. Expectations are not met. If a teacher addresses mistakes, that's a bullet point right here. If a teacher addresses mistakes in math class, that math class is considered white supremacist. Teachers are teachers and students are learners. That's that bullet point right here. It says, if you are a white supremacist, if you believe that teachers are teachers and students are learners. Because in anti-racist math, what they want to have happen is that students teach the teachers math. Now, I told you guys this was crazy. I told you. Shannon said maybe teachers will make up history just to incorporate math lessons. I think that that's probably already happening. I don't know if we're going to get into the math of the ancestors. The math of the ancestors is this idea that you need to let children do math in the way that their culture always did math. So you have to teach history about the culture and how that did math. Otherwise, you're not letting the children do the math of the ancestors. So that's basically what Shannon just said in her super chat. Let's see. What are some other things that are considered white supremacist math? Math is taught in a linear fashion and skills are taught sequentially without consideration of prerequisite knowledge. That's that thing I said with Joshua about Algebra 1 leading to Algebra 2. Superficial curriculum changes are offered to address culturally responsive or relevant pedagogy and practices. Here's one. If state standards guide the learning curriculum in the classroom, that's considered to be white supremacy. Good math teaching is considered an antidote for mathematical inequity for Black, Latin. This is crazy. All right. Here down at the bottom. If students are required to show their work in math class, how many of you were required? Like, I could always do math in my head. This got me into trouble all the time. I was like I remember in like the 3rd and 4th grade, I had memorized the entire times tables and they would do those tests, like those pop quizzes in class where they would have us do multiplication. And it was a contest for me every single week. In like 4th or 5th grade or something, I would have a contest with myself to see how fast I could answer all the questions on the math test about multiplication. And I was always the fastest one. There were tests that I would do like under a minute. I'd be like, because I knew all the answers because I memorized the answers. And then the teachers would always come back and be like, Carlin, you need to show your work for how you got these answers. I was like, I did it in my head. I memorized it. That was never good enough. So now I know that my teachers in the 5th grade were just practicing white supremacy when they demanded that I show my work. Where was this then? I could have called all my teachers racist because I could do math in my head and they didn't like that I could do math in my head. Man, I feel like I missed out.
A moment.
Oh, hang on, Sam. I missed Sam's super chat. Sorry, Sam. Sam says, can the ancestors put a telescope into L2 dance? I don't know what that means, Sam, but I think the ancestors could probably do whatever they want because it's usually just made up nonsense.
Meant to read them, and if I can, I'm going to put them in the chat box in case you can't read it on the screen. So let me take a minute to pause real quick. I'll put them in the chat box so you can actually see them. Hold on, I have to stop sharing. It won't let me do that. But what I want you to do is in the chat box, if you don't mind thinking about what are some of the ones that maybe you have engaged with, what are the ones that you've seen happen, which ones strike your mind as maybe not something that you recognized before. I invite you to read those right now and then put in the chat box which ones you're surprised about, which ones have you done, which ones have you seen.
Nothing.
Oh, there's only one person. I know that most of us have seen or done or
They only got one response. They only got one response to her question. There's only one person actually engaging with this. That's hilarious. Must be white supremacy. That must be white supremacy why no one wants to learn how to do anti-racist math.
witnessed more than these. So thank you. Rigor is an interesting one. I'll try to maybe hit on that one a little bit, but feel free to add your own, feel free to share. Yeah, the right way and the only way, that happens a lot, especially in math. Yeah, the concept of rigor is really interesting. Tracking. So thank you. I really appreciate you all. Feel free to keep them coming. And so I think that like there are ones that are like kind of clear in our minds, right? That we might like, oh, okay, it makes sense that like when we're thinking about rigor, especially when we think about things like grit and like the racist undertones of what it means to have grit and rigor and things like that. Those ones are like maybe clear, but maybe it's not, like addressing mistakes, right? That one may not be as clear. And so this workbook really offers you an opportunity to think about more ways in which white supremacy culture shows up in our classrooms. But we can't only talk about white supremacy culture, because I think
thank
that,
God.
right,
Thank
like
God for
in
that.
sort of visibilizing what white supremacy culture looks like, that's like, oh, okay, now I know maybe what I shouldn't do, but what should I do instead? And so I want to make sure that as you engage with the workbook, or as you engage with thinking about this, that we highlighted some characteristics of anti-racist math educators, because we need to know what we should do differently. And so one of the first one, right, is it's designing a culturally sustaining math space. And even if you aren't in math, designing a culturally sustaining space, and like an actual culturally sustaining space. So not just like putting things up in your classroom or putting like posters of folks up in the classroom. That has a place too. I'm not trying to knock anybody who does that. I do that as well. But really making sure that we design our spaces for students of color and for folks who may or may not be in our classrooms that still need to be centered, right? Like maybe you don't have a lot of Black and brown students, or maybe you don't have like LGBT students that you might see, right? But that doesn't mean that your space shouldn't welcome those folks. So even a lot of times with anti-racist work, they're like, oh, but I don't teach students of color. Well, I think that like you still should center them in your classrooms, because we also don't want our white students, right, to walk out into the world and not understand experiences of folks of color too, right? So
why are you teaching them
have to make sure that-
experiences of folks in color in math class? This is what she's saying. She's saying that some teachers have said to her, I don't have any non-white students, which like in a place in like New Hampshire, that wouldn't be actually out of the realm of possibility. And she's saying, well, it doesn't matter if you don't have non-white students. You should still center students of color so that you can teach your white students about the Black experience in fucking math class. Listen, man, I am not opposed to students of all races learning about different types of human experiences. I'm not opposed to that. I am opposed to it in fucking math class.
Our spaces are really culturally sustaining. So think about, for example, like I know that we like to think about routines, but for folks of color, ceremony is really important. So how we open our class, how we close our class is actually more than just, oh, we should do a routine because students should.
You want to have a whole ceremony to start math class? Is that literally what she's suggesting? That the way to teach anti-racist math will be to have an opening? It's like an opening ceremony. You know what it is, guys? It's like the Olympics. I don't care about the Olympics at all. I didn't even know the Olympics were starting today until I saw that Uyghur Muslim thing on Twitter. But now we're talking about every single math class having a grand opening ceremony like the Olympics, and they probably have a closing, a land blessing. Yes, that's exactly. They had to do an anti-racist land blessing at the start of math class in order to teach fucking geometry. Because we all know geometry is different when we get into the math of the ancestors.
Follow it. It's like that's actually part of like how we live life. And so thinking about how do you design spaces?
Exactly. Sid, light a candle, pray to the Mayan god of math, and then do an interpretive West African dance. A land blessing, or the canoe. Oh God, the Evergreen Canoe meeting. Remember when we watched the Evergreen Canoe meeting? Holy shit. Yes, this absolutely counts as land blessing. All of you just got your land blessing bingo square. Land blessing is always the hardest bingo square to get, and I just gave it to you as a gift. We're going to do a land blessing at the start of every math class to make sure that all students feel comfortable being a part of the math class. What the fuck? Nothing pisses me off like anti-racist fucking math. God.
That are culturally sustaining for students. Ethnomathematics is also really important. It's how we deal with numbers on a regular basis. There's no way that you have gotten up today and have not interacted with math or numbers. There's no way. You've done it already today.
Ethnomathematics is how you interact with numbers when you're not white. Ethnomathematics.
And so ethnomathematics is really thinking about what are those everyday things that we sort of engage with.
White people have their own numbers.
Or math or mathematics, even in ways we don't necessarily realize. And that goes beyond bringing like real world examples into the classroom. Because a lot of times what we do is we say, okay, we have this like thing to teach. Now let me figure out what in the world like does that. And it's like, no, you walk the world and you engage in math.
What the fuck? I have this thing to teach and I just don't know how to teach it. It's not as though I went through entire teacher training programs about how to teach math. I just showed up in my classroom and I had no idea how to teach math. How do I even do that? Oh, I get it. I need to center ethnic mathematics. That's how I teach math. That's literally what she just said. Oh my God. Yes, you guys are always trying to cheat at bingo. I'm feeling generous today. I've had a lazy day. I was fighting on Twitter like all day. I'm feeling generous. Yes, you can use math space as safe space for bingo because it basically means the same thing. I will allow it, Sin. I just want to listen to this last part again.
Also really important. It's how we deal with numbers on a regular basis. There's no way that you have gotten up today and have not interacted with math or numbers. There's no.
Sin got a cross bingo. Oh, that's usually not on the bingo thing, but you know what? I'll allow it. Congratulations, Sin, on your cross bingo. Congratulations. Maybe we'll do cross bingo next time just for kicks. All right, guys, Sin has gotten a cross bingo. If you get a line bingo or corners bingo, you can still call that out, but now we're going for blackout bingo. That's the next level. But please, if you get a bingo, please continue to call that out. We will celebrate. You won't win anything, but we will salute you in the chat if you get a bingo.
Way. You've done it already today. And so ethnomathematics is really thinking about what are those everyday things that we sort of engage with that encompass numeracy or math or mathematics, even in ways we don't necessarily realize. And that goes beyond bringing like real world examples into the classroom. Because a lot of times what we do is we say, okay, we have this like thing to teach. Now let me figure out what in the world like does that. And it's like,
how is this woman training teachers? How is this woman training oh God, Metastep, you're right. Blackout bingo is racist. Holy shit, cancel me. Cancel me harder, Metastep. It probably is racist. Lonely Wolf 1980 says, I want to use the paddle on my anti-BS canoe to knock some sense into this madness. Lonely Wolf, you use that paddle all you want. You do it, darling. You do it. Paddle that like button while you're at it. The like button's been very bad today. I'm just saying.
No, you walk the world and you engage in math every day. Why don't we bring that into our classroom and make sure our content aligns with that? And so really rethinking how we engage with mathematics and how we teach mathematics in the ways that we experience them as we walk the world, not just to bring in that real world content. And that's true for folks who are not math educators as well. Like,
ooh, Leonard downloaded it. Thank you, Leonard.
Ethnic studies, we treat ethnic studies like content, and it can be, but ethnic studies is also a pedagogy and an approach. And if we shift that, then we can also think more widely and more broadly about how do we engage with ethnic studies to close barriers for folks in a way that's different and doesn't seem like it's just based on content. There's so much work about ethnic studies as pedagogy and framework, and I encourage everybody to research that and look into it. Also, I know we've already had some comments about what rigor is and what rigor is not, and then another day we can go more in a deep dive of like what we mean to say make rigor accessible through strong and thoughtful scaffolding. And
why isn't rigor accessible?
That is important because I think a lot of times we sacrifice rigor to make things easier for folks just so that they get through it, and then a lot of times we
are you suggesting that people might sacrifice teaching math in order to make things easier for people who are non-white? Incognito! Yay! Okay, so what Incognito is talking about, for those of you who don't know, so I'm doing a special in my locals, and I need one more annual member. If I get 5 annual members in my locals, and I've already gotten 4 with Incognito's upgrade, then I will purchase and stream an elementary equity teacher education thing for Spy Stream, because it does cost money to purchase it. So we have one more local supporter to go. If you want to become the 5th and crucial and clutch annual locals member, head over to kb.locals.com/support. It is the thing in the ticker. It is also in the pin to the top of the chat. It is also in the description if you're watching on Odyssey and Rockfin. Checking in over there real quick. Let's see. M169 got some super chats. Thank you for the support, guys. Now that I think back on it, I swear the first step I recall into this BS was normalizing Ebonics. They said it was okay to allow ELA in classes. Yep, I think that's probably true. Sin says, just for all your hard work, governor candidate. Well, thank you, Sin. Running for governor of New Hampshire is a very hard and arduous task. And I was a little scared to accept the honor when I did last weekend, when I didn't know I was getting nominated for governor, and then all of a sudden I was the nominee for governor. But I feel as though I've eased into the role. I feel as though I understand what's expected of me. I feel as though I have brought the right amount of snark to the race so far. There has been a signal group created that is designed to help me do the bare minimum that I need to do to run for governor. Maybe I'll put up a website. I may even put up a donation button. I'm thinking very strongly about t-shirts and other merch. So we're going to do this governor thing, man. I already got nominated. You might as well do it. We'll see. But as a reminder, my platform is that you should support Jeremy Kauffman for Senate. Jeremy Kauffman's fundraising is doing really well so far. He's bringing in that money, which is what we need to run him a fantastic campaign. If you want to know more about what he stands for, go to Jeremy4nh.com. That's Jeremy, the number 4, not the word 4, the number 4, nh.com, and you can find out more about his campaign for Senate. And then Emphasize says, do you think there will come a time that allowing this to happen will be considered white-centered and racist after this makes kids dumber by saying it was allowed on purpose to hurt people of color? I mean, Emphasize, I really hope not. I think what you're talking about, though, is like the inevitable backlash to this, which I've written about on my Substack, the inevitable backlash to critical race theory and all this woke bullshit. If like, I've talked about this a million times, right? Like, life is about balance. If you go too far in this direction, there's going to be a swing back over into this direction because things will always balance out. And so if you go too hard on this anti-racist bullshit, what's going to happen? Actual white supremacy as a balance to that. And so is it possible that there could absolutely be a backlash to anti-racist math? I would bet on it. But my hope is that we start to get this under control so we can start to level some of this out. Because again, if you go to the extreme on one end, you will inevitably, and this is good advice for life, guys. This is not just for like politics. If you go to the extreme on one end, you will inevitably create the extreme on the other end. So if you don't want extremes in your life, don't go to extremes, because if you go to the extreme on one side, you're going to create this other side over here that you're going to have to deal with at some point. You always want to try to make sure you have a balanced perspective, a balanced approach, as much as you possibly can. But I appreciate the super chat emphasize. Oh yeah, Jess says Lily Tang Williams is running too in New Hampshire. Guys, if you didn't see Lily Tang Williams on Tim Pool this week, I strongly recommend you watch it. I watched most of it. I didn't watch all of it. You guys know how much I love and adore Tim Pool. Which I actually think he's fine. Like, people think I hate Tim Pool. I don't hate Tim Pool. I actually think he's very smart, and I think he's a very hard worker. He and I just are too much alike, so our personalities go like this. And so it's just like not my favorite thing to watch. That doesn't mean you shouldn't watch it, and I definitely think you should watch the episode with Lily Tang Williams and donate to her campaign. Lily will be on my channel next week. I believe it's on the 8th that she's coming on, but I will make sure to announce that in my locals. I've also got Harrison Kemp, who's running for governor of Maine. So Harrison's running for governor of Maine as a libertarian. I'm running for governor of New Hampshire as a libertarian. And so we're going to have a great chat as well. But Lily is coming on the channel this week. I'm always excited to talk to her. She is a spitfire, and she needs to win. We all need to help Lily Tang Williams win the Republican nomination for Congress, and then ultimately to defeat Annie Custer in November. All right, let's get back to it, guys. Please make sure you mount that like button. Please make sure you subscribe to the channel if you have not already. If this is your first happy hour, I do these every week at 5 p.m. on Actively Unwoke. We watch a woke training, we comment on it, we chit-chat back and forth in the chat. I drink beer. I'm about ready to open another Guinness Nitro Cold Brew Coffee.
Actually over scaffold even when they could just be rigorous. And so really thinking about how we can redefine rigor and really think about rigor and scaffolding in a very, very different.
How can we redefine rigor? Emphasize, my questions are rhetorical. I understand, emphasize. I understand, but I like to use them as a jumping off point for conversation. You send in a super chat. Listen, man, if you send in a super chat, I'm going to give you your money's worth on that super chat because I really do appreciate the support. And God knows I ain't making it from YouTube right now for ad revenue. So the super chats really, really, really do help. And I greatly, greatly appreciate it.
In a very, very different way.
Oh God.
Of course, we want students of color to close the
wasn't my
gap
fault.
in access to STEM fields. I'm not going to talk more about that one, but that's also really important, especially in the Bay Area and Silicon Valley. We're right here, and like we are leaving out like our population, even in this space in Silicon Valley, doesn't match right the employment, and so really thinking about that. Encouraging multiple and varying ways of sharing and communicating knowledge. This is so important. I can't talk about how many classrooms I see students just get shut down for like doing things differently. We have
bullshit.
And all of that has
bullshit.
To be
I don't believe her.
Classrooms. We can't not do that. And it's more than just like allowing it. I think whenever you get to a point where you say you can allow something.
Remember when we talked about math of the ancestors? When she's saying, I've seen so many classes where students are shut down for doing math differently. I mean, math is pretty straightforward. It's addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division, and then you get some, like, you get more complicated with, like, fractions and geometry and calculus and shit. But basically, those are the 4 functions that you need to master, right? Can we all agree on that? Can we all agree that addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division are, like, the baseline? I'm not talking about fucking new math or any of those stupid boxes or anything, but like what they're talking about in terms of like, I see student or teachers all the time shutting down the way students are doing things. What they're talking about is math of the ancestors. This is not Common Core bullshit box math that where you have to like, put things in boxes and add them. And by the way, I'm going to say this. One of my, if I ever have a child, I'm still technically of childbearing age. I could still have a child. If I ever have a child, they're not learning that new math bullshit either. I'm going to be one of those parents that's like, no, we're not teaching boxes and moving shit around. We're teaching actual basics. I will teach that kid math myself. I've always dreamt about being one of the parents that like the teachers fear. Like they see me coming, they're like, oh shit. Like they complain about me in the teacher's lounge and stuff like that. I would absolutely be that way if you try to teach my kid how to do Common Core fucking box math or whatever the hell. But yeah, what they're talking about with this section is math of the ancestors. And you have to allow students to do math in the way their culture teaches them to do math. That's math of the ancestors. Emphasize says, I'm a participant in the uncancel movement. Me too, Emphasize. Me too. If you are a participant in the uncancel movement, make sure you mount that like button for me. We wouldn't want the like button to be canceled, would we? Mount that like button. Show it some love.
We have
in whatever way you define love. That's entirely up to you.
to like check that a little bit, because why is it what's allowed? Like, we literally just exist. And so how can we make sure that our students are being able to exist in spaces the way that, you know, exist as who they are in our spaces, and communicate their knowledge and their ways of sharing it.
See,
in that
support
way.
students
Because
to
a lot of
reclaim their
times
math.
What happens is, if someone is
See,
not explaining it the way that
I didn't notice it on the slide. See how where it says support students to reclaim their mathematical ancestry? That's math of the ancestors. That's what they're talking about there.
that we taught it, or explaining it the way that we think is academic, you know, language, then they're shut down in their thinking, and that's not okay. And this is a big one, supporting students to reclaim their mathematical ancestry. It bothers me when certain mathematical concepts are connected with certain people when
Like
we know
what?
they existed beforehand.
Like
And
what?
that's really important, because
Give an example.
like
She won't give
we
an
just know,
example.
like, you know, anyways, I won't go into that, but I think that there's so much math that existed before it was recorded and worshipped in written word, and that in itself, right, what is written being valued is another form of white supremacy culture. So I just want us to like,
Did you guys all catch that? What is written is another form of white supremacy. Writing is white supremacy. I'm just going to rewind it a little bit so you can catch that nice little quip. Writing is white supremacy.
what is written being valued is another form of white supremacy culture. So I just want us to like really challenge that. And one that's kind of missing from this list that I want to add is that that anti-racist educators are always learning and unlearning. Like earlier in the chat box, I saw that some people mentioned like very colonial ways of thinking, and that, you know, we are a product, and our history is of that. And so if we don't check, right, like our colonial ways of being and understanding the world, then we're perpetuating these ideas. So I would also add to consistently like learn and unlearn, and keep in mind that anti-racism is a journey. It is not a destination. You can't check off any boxes. And so we are continually, right, as the world continually.
You know, Stephen in the chat says, I'm pretty sure writing didn't start with white people. You know what I think didn't start with white people? Time. How many people have been to Machu Picchu? Has anyone been to Machu Picchu? I have. You know what they have on Machu Picchu? In Peru, in the middle of the jungle, they have sundials. Machu Picchu itself took a tremendous amount of mathematical knowledge to be able to build, but these people, like this woman right here, will tell you that that all this was created by white people in order to uphold white supremacist values. But you can literally find sundials on Machu Picchu. I don't know how that works. Sin is having a good bingo day. I wasn't expecting that, Sin. I'm glad it's a good bingo day. Yeah, Machu Picchu, man. If you can get to Machu Picchu, holy shit. Another fun fact about Machu Picchu is in the town, there is a church with a black Jesus crucifix, which I thought was really interesting. There's like all this market. I love being in Peru because you get to barter for everything, and I loved bartering in the market. So there's a lot of that there. But if you like, man, I'll tell you what, when you first walk up onto Machu Picchu and you see that view that's like the classic view that's like in all the pictures, it is unbelievable. Unbelievable. And then you think about how they found how they built Machu Picchu, and then how they discovered it. Like Machu Picchu was built like like, oh my god, I cannot even imagine that. Like even getting up that mountain, you have to take a bus from the bottom of the mountain to the top of the mountain to even get there. And then you imagine that they had to clear all that shit out. Like, you're telling me that they didn't use math? Are you kidding me? Please. Sam says, LOL, anti-racist teachers are always unlearning. Isn't that the truth? Isn't that the truth, Sam? Yeah, the Sumerians, man. The Sumerians, well, we're still gonna do Anunnaki week. I know I haven't done Anunnaki week ever. I like yet. I came up with this idea like 6 months ago and I just haven't done it yet. We're still gonna do Anunnaki week. Anunnaki week. That's the beer talking. Anunnaki. We were all created from aliens. The Anunnaki taught us everything we know. The Anunnaki were not messing around with anti-racist math bullshit. God. The Anunnaki need to come back and save us. That's what needs to happen. We need our Anunnaki overlords to come and save us from all of this crap.
Changes, we also need to adapt and alter these lists to include more of the experiences that we have. And yes, sorry, I'm reading the comments. Yes. So right now, what I want us to do, I'm going to invite us to freedom dream a little bit.
Hang on, I'm going to read this because I'm sure that, one of the things that we learn with Happy Hour is that they never ever read the slides that they show. And sometimes when you read the slides, it's like the best stuff that's in there. So freedom dreaming. Freedom dreaming is imagining worlds that are just representing people's full humanity, centering people left on the edges, thriving in solidarity with folks, FOLX, from different identities who have struggled for justice and knowing that dreams are just around the corner with the people, with the might of the people in power. Yeah, Incognito says the Egyptians did math. Like, the pyramids are a goddamn miracle. Well, it's because of the Anunnaki. That's all Anunnaki, man. I know people think I'm crazy for believing in this stuff. I don't care. The Anunnaki theory is the only thing that makes sense. That there were aliens that came here from long ago, and they're depicted in Sumerian culture. That's the Anunnaki. And then here's the too long. Oh God, hang on, I'm choking. Hang on, let me take a drink. Okay, so here is the too long didn't read version of the Anunnaki. They were aliens that came to Earth because they needed to mine gold, because gold is like a precious thing to them that they needed to do whatever. I'm totally going to butcher the Anunnaki thing. But in order to mine their gold, they created human beings by splicing us together in order to be their slaves. And that's why we're so obsessed with gold as human beings, because gold is like everywhere. Gold is like actually not that rare, but we're obsessed with it as human beings because we were created to mine gold for the Anunnaki, who we worshipped as gods. And then at some point, the Anunnaki kind of treated us like pets, and they took care of us. And at some point they were like, we like you humans. We're going to leave you be on this earth and we're going to go back onto our planet. That's Anunnaki. That's when you really get into Anunnaki. That's where you start having some like, oh shit moments. And then you talk about the geometry. If you guys are not on Gaia, I know, okay, this is the point where like Carlin has had a drink and she's going to start saying weird shit. But you know what? Here's the thing. We're already talking about anti-racist math. So if you think that me believing in aliens is any weirder than the shit we're watching now, I don't know what to tell you. If you look at the geometry of like the pyramids to certain locations in South Africa where they think the Anunnaki landed, there is like direct lines. It's on the same fucking lateral parallel. It's fascinating. It's fascinating. If you have some time tonight, Google Anunnaki or subscribe to Gaia. Gaia has a lot of great shows about people explaining the Anunnaki and other alien things. And yeah, some of it's really cheesy and poorly produced, but it's fascinating. It is even my husband was like, this Anunnaki shit is the only thing that makes sense. We're all created to be slaves to aliens to mine their gold for them. That's why we're here. Okay. Let's go back to anti-racist math now. That's enough Anunnaki. We're going to have Anunnaki week at some point, I promise.
So freedom dreaming is sort of imagining worlds that are just, representing people's full humanity, centering people
Oh, God.
left on the edge.
Emphasize him with the super chat. It was only one super smart baby Superman in the amethyst geode that fell from the sky and from the future. Dude, like, there are all sorts in pop culture. There are all sorts of references to like the Anunnaki with shit like that. I swear to God. It's so creepy. It's like collective consciousness. Because you guys know I believe in the collective consciousness where there is a big, vast, like, I believe that the purpose of life is experience, and through our experiences we feed the collective consciousness, so we all have access to like the same type of information, and from the collective consciousness all these stories get pulled. So things that like we see show up in pop culture, like reference things from the collective consciousness. It's weird. It is weird when you start looking at it. Incognito says, facts aren't facts without censoring us, Tom McDonald. All right. Back to anti-racist math. That's enough fun. That's enough fun for everyone. Mount that like button if you haven't already.
Edges, thriving in solidarity with folks from different identities who have struggled together for justice, and knowing that dreams are just around the corner, not these things far off in the distance. And so what I want us to do is I'm going to take us through an activity. So I invite you to turn off your camera if it is on, if you'd like.
Ooh, an
And to close
activity.
your eyes if it feels right and safe to do.
We all get to do a visualization
and
activity
I'm going to walk us through a freedom
for
dreaming
math
exercise. I'm going to walk
Hang
us
on. Let's just talk about how we're supposed to be talking about how to teach math. Just as a reminder, this is literally a training webinar for how to teach math. I know we just talked about aliens, okay? So I know that some people might be getting off track. That's my fault. I was not an effective facilitator. But this is supposed to be a training webinar about equitable math instruction. And she is about to force everyone in this webinar to do a freedom dreaming exercise, in which freedom dreaming is imagining worlds that are just representative of people's full humanity, centering people left on the edges, thriving in solidarity with folks from different identities who have struggled together for justice, knowing that dreams are just around the corner with the power of people. We're about to do a visualization exercise that's going to help us to teach math to the underserved. Are you guys ready? Are you ready for visualization? Let's do it.
through a freedom dreaming exercise. And I'm just going to talk us through. I want you to literally not be limited, right? So I don't want you to think about what are these limitations? What are this? Just really imagine what it would be like if our schools were really anti-racist, if our students were thriving. Okay. All right. So I want us to think about our classrooms, our schools, our learning spaces, and what they would seem, what they would look like, what they would feel like if we really engaged in anti-racist education. At the end, I'm going to invite you to share, but I don't want you to focus on that part right now. I just wanted to give you a heads up. I'm going to talk us through this visualization. As we freedom dream, I want you to imagine what it would be like to do anti-racist work in your learning space. What would it look like to tap into holistic aspects of what it means to exist, to be, to learn, to teach?
It's about math. Math.
What would it look like? What would it feel like if Black and Brown voices, stories,
not Asian,
and experiences
they don't care about Asian,
were centered at your site? What would it feel like if the languages and native tongues of multilingual students,
math of the ancestors,
were to be honored? What would it look like if Black, Indigenous, people of color,
Not
We're
Asians.
thriving.
Not Asians. Asians are too good at math for recognition. We don't care about Asians.
What would it feel like if white students, families, and teachers acknowledge their individual and collective privilege and work towards liberation for Black and brown lives?
Sorry. I know I'm
What
supposed
would
to be
it look
taking it
like
seriously.
if white teachers, families, and the larger community and other folks with privilege and power gave all that up and other benefits in order to prioritize the needs of Black and brown community members?
Why do we need to give up anything in math class?
What would it look like? What would it feel like if teachers modeled being anti-racist leaders in society?
It would look like activism.
What would it look like? What would it feel like if admin supported them in doing so? What would it feel like to build and sustain a culture of accountability, self-reflection, and growth?
Wouldn't look like teaching math, I'm going to tell you that. No math was taught in this meditation.
I'm going to give you a minute to silently reflect on any other questions or thoughts that came up for you.
Oh, good. Silent reflection about teaching math. Did she mention math at all in that meditation at all? What the hell? This is not about math. No one is learning math better as a result of this meditation or this reflection. And the fact that they're using meditation really pisses me off because, you know, this isn't going to work because they didn't do deep breathing or anything. But you can leave suggestions in people's psyche through meditation, which she was trying to do the meditation voice. Where she fucked up is she didn't have them do deep breathing in and out and to get them into a calm space before she tried to do her fucking meditation. This really pisses me off. This is about math. This is not about activism or centering fucking Black and brown bodies. Bingo word.
That felt like a very long 45 seconds, but I
yes,
want to
it
thank
did.
you for freedom dreaming with me.
I'm sorry to be swearing so much, but this stuff just pisses me off.
As we transition, I'm going to count us in breathing in and breathing out.
Oh, there's the breathing. Oh, there it is.
So let's breathe in.
She should have done this first if she wanted to implant suggestions into people, but
and out.
Too late now.
And in.
Need to do fucking guided meditation in order to teach math.
Out. One more time.
God.
Breathe in. Breathe out. And I invite you to open your eyes and turn on your cameras when you are ready.
Does everyone feel rested and rejuvenated and ready to teach math? Is everyone ready to go? My God.
As you are turning your cameras back on, again, thank you so much for freedom dreaming with me. I invite you to share what were some things you envisioned when we did our freedom dreaming, and what is your freedom dream for your learning space. And you can either unmute or write in the chat box. I want to give some time and space to do that.
No one's going to answer. Watch, no one's going to answer. These people are insane. Did any of you have a good dream or a visualization about how to teach math?
Thank you all for sharing.
Steven says, I've never felt less mathematical than I have at this very moment.
Celebration, spirit.
Yes, the celebration of the spirit of teaching math. My God.
How awesome would it be to have vertical, not vertical, but horizontal leadership? I love that idea. Thank you.
My God. I cannot even. Sam says, I recognized the word choice from my hypnotic induction training when I became a hypnotist. Good call on the planting subconscious ideas. Right? Right? Like, she didn't execute it perfectly, but man, if she had made them do the breathing at the beginning, she could have actually, like, that's how meditation works. Shannon said, Wakanda strong. This is how they did it. But don't joke about that, because listen, man, in Wakanda, they had those women engineers knew how to do math. No Wakandan engineers are being trained in the course of anti-racist math. Like, come on. I know I say come on a lot, but I just like this is why Joe Biden says come on, man, all the time. It's like there's just nothing else to say. It's like this is crazy. This is crazy. We're having a visualization ceremony about teaching math class. Oh, hang on. Emphasize, thanks for the super chat. This all looks like segregation to make people of color dumber while being an irritation to the Chinese and white people, because this is only supposed to be for people. No, that's incorrect, Emphasize. She said earlier. So there was someone in the chat who asked her earlier, apparently, like, what happens if I don't have non-white students? Because like in places like New Hampshire, like we're pretty white. And so someone asked her, what happens if I have non-white students? And she said you needed to teach them anti-racist math as well and center non-white experiences to help them learn about the experiences of others in math class. And again, I want to emphasize, like, I'm not opposed to people learning about different life experiences. And I do believe that our race impacts the experience we have, for better or worse. I do believe it does impact it. Now, do I believe that it's everything about our experience? No, absolutely not. But they did actually teach that you need to teach this to white students too. So it's not just about holding people of color back, although it does hold people of color back. It seems pretty racist to me to believe that people who are not white or Asian are incapable of learning math unless they're pandered to, and need visualization exercises to learn math, and need to not be ever corrected in order to learn math. That to me seems pretty effing racist. Anyone is capable of learning math. It does not matter what the color of your skin is or any of that. Everyone can learn math if you have a good math teacher. There has been no teaching about how to actually teach math in the course of this webinar, and it's called the Math Equity Toolkit, a pathway to equitable math instruction. They have not taught one single thing about math in the entire course of this webinar we've been watching for 41 flipping minutes. You guys know I'm not lecturing you in the chat. I love you guys. You guys are awesome. I just get so fired up about this bullshit. It's so ridiculous and unnecessary, and is ruining an entire generation because they don't want to teach math in math class. They want to teach West African fucking interpretive fucking dance. Anyway, let's keep going. We got 20 minutes left, thereabouts.
Multiple languages. Thank you.
She's getting nothing, by the way, in terms of responses. That's why she's not saying anything.
I'm going to go back one slide because, Dr. Bettina Love talks about how, yes, we freedom dream, right? But that freedom dream is not far off. It can be right around the corner, and we have to work hard to make that happen. And that's a lot of why we are doing, right, what we are doing.
Listen, they already have enough ammo to call me crazy. Let's be honest. They have more than enough ammo to call me crazy. I don't really care, because you know what the thing of it is? If this stuff doesn't piss you off, then what are you doing? Like, nothing pisses me off more than when people with children, like, I don't have children, right? But like, people who have children are more pissed off about me swearing on the internet than they are about the fact that your kid's school is not teaching math. This is just a matter of priorities, man. If people on the internet are going to be more pissed off at me because I have a tone, or I swear, or I say something a little fiery, but they're not going to be pissed off about the fact that an entire generation of students is not learning math or reading or writing because they're doing fucking freedom dreaming exercise bullshit in teacher instruction classes, I know what my priorities are. My God. This is just a matter of values. If you value, and I'm not lecturing you, Anita Reason. I know you understand this. But like, if you value a quiet, calm presentation about how much anti-racist math sucks, I'm simply not the right person to watch, man. I just don't know many other people talking about this stuff on the internet. But I'm sure there are other people that are talking about it far more calmly and will not be quite as pissed off about the fact that people are teaching meditation exercises as a form of math instruction in schools. This is what our taxpayer dollars are paying for right here. Why aren't people more pissed about this? I don't want to pay for this. If I'm elected governor of New Hampshire, I will push a bill to make property tax optional, which will effectively defund the schools, because 2/3 of my property tax right now goes to funding the schools that I don't even use because I don't have kids. If I'm elected governor of New Hampshire, I will defund the schools by making property tax optional, because this is bullshit and we shouldn't be paying for this. All right. I just need to get that out of my system. All right, let's continue.
Thank you all for sharing. Please keep them coming. One way that I love these dreams. I'm really going to read them as we go.
Oh,
So
Grandma Nay, I gotta
get
you a wrench. I'll get you a wrench. Okay, I got you.
And so we created this workbook with this sort of 5-part plan of engaging, reflecting, planning, and then acting on that plan, and then reflecting again to think about, like, how was that work? How was engaging in anti-racist work for all of the purposes that you all are talking about in the
critical
chat box?
praxis.
I really encourage you, as you get into this, if you want to work on this, or as you bring this into your learning spaces, like, keep in mind that you have a goal and you have a vision, and use the visions that you're talking about in the chat box to make your action plans, to make those things happen, because our dreams can be reality. And so I want to talk a little bit about, I know I've said before, we have a deep dive of like how to actually engage with the work. But I know that not everyone here is a math teacher. And I also know that some questions around how the workbook can be used are really important. And so again, if you want to look at just how to use it, you can go to that deep dive that's on the website, on equitablemath.org. But also I want to give you some.
I really do not understand. This is a side rant. And again, it has nothing to do with anyone in the chat. I'm not targeting this at anyone. But it is mind-boggling to me. You know, the intellectuals on Twitter have been intellectualizing about this entire argument. And it's like, I don't know how people think that if we just intellectualize about this argument and we just talk about it with a calm, even tone, and we point out the obvious problems with teaching math by teaching meditation and interpretive West African fucking dance, like, I just do not understand. I do not understand how people believe that this problem is going to be solved by intellectualizing it and talking about it in a calm tone. And because if logic and reason were going to win the day, they already would have. It's not as though this is a new subject. That freaking read Okun and Jones Characteristics of White Supremacy Culture, that was written in 2007. I have read that. I've analyzed that document. That was written in like 2007. That was 15 goddamn years ago. If all it was going to require was intellectualizing calmly and rationally and pointing out the obvious flaws in the argument that you can teach math by having people dream and do dance and song. Like, if that was all that was going to be required, we already would have solved this problem. That is not all that's going to be required. And it really pisses me off that people put my tone and my tweets as, oh, Carlin, you are destroying this movement. Like, fuck you. What the fuck are you doing? Why aren't you more mad about this? It makes absolutely no sense to me why people are not obsessed or not obsessed, but not upset with what has been done to our public schools. And the public schools have always been fucked. Like, let's be honest, they've never been that great. But I do not understand, especially among parents who have kids in public schools, why they're more concerned about my tone and being nice on the internet. Like, are you kidding me? You are going to lose. Your children are going to be indoctrinated. No one's going to learn how to do math, which means no one's going to learn how to build bridges and buildings and all the things that need to be built and functional in our society. But you're going to complain about my tone. At least Carlin stopped sending mean tweets on Twitter. Are you fucking kidding me? Get some priorities, man. Get some priorities. I'm sorry. End rant. Let's continue.
Some considerations and other notes for how you might use this, both in the math classroom, but also in
anti-racist math just brings out the best in me. It really does.
Or even in your life, if you'd like as well. So the first thing is to read Tema Okun and Kenneth Jones' Characteristics of White Supremacy Culture. A lot of the work that we do in the workbook is based on this, and this is really important, especially if you're not in a math classroom, because it shows how it shows up in organizations. And we are all part of institutions. We are all part of an institution, right? Like even this organization is part of larger institutions. And so this visibilizes how white supremacy culture shows up in our spaces and in organizations. And so you can be more cognizant of those things and can challenge them as they come. This article even has antidotes. So they treat it like this is a problem and how do we treat it with antidotes? And so it's a really good article that is a really foundational one for anti-racist work. And it was really foundational to the work that we did with stride 1 of the toolkit, because we use those definitions and that language. And so a lot of times people are like, I don't understand power hoarding, or I don't understand what it means when it says objectivity or things like that. And so this article from Tema Okun and Kenneth Jones can really help to ground the definitions of those words. Thank you for putting the link in, Kim. Thank you. Also, you can go beyond this workbook. So like I said, for math books, right, like you can use it as is. Other folks can also use it as is. But if you're not in the math classroom, think about the white supremacy culture characteristics. Think about how they show up every day. Like you can still read how and why they show up and what's the importance of dismantling them. And you can also take into mind all of the other information as well. But when you create your plan, sorry, I'm really bright right now. When you create your plan, you can do it for your own context. Okay, so the workbook too was also written like to address 2 of the white supremacy culture characteristics per month. But it's okay to maybe do 1, right? Or it's okay to say, well, actually, you know what? I need a longer month on that. Or sometimes
Sam in the chat asks, what teacher doesn't understand what objectivity is? Why do they have a certification? The bar is so low. Well, Sam, according to these people, and maybe it would be a good idea to, at some point on one of my streams on my primary channel this week, maybe it's a good idea to review the white supremacist culture document, because I haven't talked about it in a while. But in the white supremacist culture document that was written in 2007, they actually say that objectivity is a characteristic of white supremacy. That's in the document. Not making that up. Certification is also white supremacy, according to Sin. I think that is actually true. Well, not only has she not said anything substantial or specific, Jamie, she also hasn't talked about math. This is an entire webinar on how to teach math. And she has literally talked more about dance and spirit fucking future dreaming than teaching. Are we just going to have students in class visualize that they all know math and they will all magically download all mathematics knowledge into their head? Is that what we're talking about? And keep in mind, I have weird new age beliefs where I do actually believe that we can download human knowledge into our head. I believe we can channel that shit. You know where it doesn't happen? In high school math class. I do actually know shamans who believe that they have downloaded the secrets of like chiropractic and different medicines into their head in meditation and ayahuasca ceremony. But you know who's not doing that? Children in math class. You want to know why? Because they never learned how to meditate. You cannot teach math through osmosis in our culture. It is not how it works. So why have we done visualization exercises and thinking about dreaming about an anti-racist math classroom and the potential of it? Like, these things don't happen by osmosis, man. I have a very woo-woo philosophy about life, and even I know that. Come on.
Your school or your institution might have goals for the year that don't necessarily align to the way that we've presented them in the workbook. So it's okay to speed up, slow down, do them in a different order.
You guys are basically my therapy, just so you know. This is my therapy right here.
Even though, like, as you can see on the picture, right, there's the section for engaging, and then they also offer what you can do instead. Please try out those verbal examples. So we thought about, like, how it doesn't happen to support anti-racist efforts in math. So really try out the verbal examples. Try out the classroom activities. If you are wondering, like, because the classroom activities are little snippets, and so if you're like, I think I want to try that, and some of the classroom activities don't also have to go with math, right? Like, you can try this in your classroom, not just in math. But if you need help with some of the classroom activities, feel free to email me. I would be happy to connect with you, especially if it's like activities or materials I already have put together. Like, just let me know. We can explain a little bit more or tell you how we use them in our classrooms, because a lot of the class activities are things that we actually used and have done in the past and are doing now. So please feel free to reach out to me or the other content developers for the classroom activities. Also, please implement the professional development. There's lots of ideas for professional development as an individual, as a department, as a school. There's a lot that we can work on there. And so we also offer that professional development. We offer professional development ideas in the workbook. You can also hire Quetzal Education Consulting. We are doing some
grifting. I am shocked.
We do
I am
anti-racist work in general.
I am shocked that they're grifting. I am shocked at this development.
Many opportunities for professional development, some that are specific to this workbook, but also to larger anti-racist ideas as well. But most importantly, because I know that sometimes people get so caught up in the work that we don't always come back to the anti-racist characteristics of anti-racist math educators.
Boo-hoo.
And so this visual is like just for you to visualize, right? You don't have to read it right now, but I know that I did like a big picture of the anti-racist math educators, but in the workbook there are also bullet points to unpack each of those characteristics.
All right, let me just pause this real quick. I'm not going to read all the bullet points, but I'll read the headlines. So, the characteristic of an anti-racist math instructor are as follows: design a culturally sustaining math space. Center ethnomathematics. By centering ethnomathematics, they mean recognize that the ways communities of color engage with mathematics and problem solving in their everyday lives. Teach them mathematics can help solve problems affecting students' communities. Identify and challenge the ways that math is used to capitalism! We got there! Yes! Yes, we have our mention of capitalism. Now, they slid this one in there. They did. It's in the third bullet point right down here. It's in the third bullet point. It says, I'm going to clear my throat. We're going to do this proper, because what people who watch Happy Hour regularly know is that capitalism is the #1 enemy of critical race theorists. They hate capitalism. Every single one of their presentations will mention dismantling capitalism at some point in the presentation, and we've just found it. Identify and challenge the ways that math is used to uphold capitalist, imperialist, and racist views. Capitalism is the enemy of anti-racist math, apparently.
Teach. And like I said, you can do this whether you're in a math classroom or not. Sometimes it's just about changing the context, but the purpose behind the work transcends grade level and transcends content. All right. So thank you so much for listening to us
Ooh,
and
their
sharing space with us
emails.
today. I
I didn't put their emails on the screen. They
this,
put their emails on the
and
screen.
I
I'm
want
just
to
saying.
open the floor for questions and comments.
Let's hear some questions and comments while their emails are displayed on the screen. It's not my fault,
You all don't
YouTube.
have
I
to
didn't put
chat,
them
you
up
can
on the
unmute
screen.
or
This is
you
on
can
YouTube.
chat,
It's their
but-
fault.
Well, I just want to know, whenever Danny is facilitating a webinar, sign me up.
Thank you.
Oh my God, what a fucking
Absolutely. I
cuck.
feel
What a
refreshed
simp.
and inspired. Thank you, Danny and Rachel.
Thank you.
Oh my God. What a nice anti-racist ally that white man is.
I can say that it is very challenging when you're trying to find examples in STEM that are diverse in terms of who's being depicted utilizing something that shows physics. And I spend a lot of hours trying to add variety of color to my PowerPoint slides because I always talk about the wonders for.
So she's talking right now about how like she needs to have people of color in her PowerPoint slides. When I was doing corporate training, because like, so I was doing corporate training really intensively leading up to like the shutdowns and the pandemic and all that. And I haven't done it in a while, but like for the last year that I would do corporate training, what would happen is every single time I gave like a corporate presentation of some sort, someone would come up to me and say, Carlin, you really have too many white people in your slides and you need to diversify your slides. So this is a true story. I'm not making this up. The last corporate training exercise I ever did, it was in Fresno, California. And I made sure I went through every single one of my slides and I made sure there were 0 images of white people. There were 0 images. Most of my slides, I took people out of them entirely. I had like blocks and like illustrations and other things because like I didn't want to have the argument. I was like, I don't want to hear about how I have too many fucking white people in my slides anymore. This was like in January or February of 2020. And so I took every single white person out of my slides. I used mostly like symbolic images for like other concepts that didn't have people in them at all. Do you want to know what happened at the end of that session? The fucking woman paying me for that session came up to me and said, Carlin, you know, your presentation was really great, but you had too many white people in your slides. I had 0 white people in my slides, and they still told me I had too many white people in my slides. I swear to God, that really happened. And that was the point where I was like, fuck this, I'm done. There's no way I can do this anymore. And then I stopped doing corporate training. I didn't stop. I do it in other ways now where I'm not outwardly facing. I do like coaching and I do stuff like that. But like that was my breaking point when I literally made a proactive effort to take every white person out of my slides and I still got told that I had white people in my slides. I was like, I'm done. I'm retired. I need a break. I've been doing this too long. 0 white people is still too many white people. Oh my God. It was like reflex. I don't even know how that came up.
Variety of people I get to meet every semester. And so I try very hard to embrace that in what I'm presenting. But wow, in STEM, it is really challenging to find images with diversity.
And you know what the worst part about that was? They hadn't paid me yet. And so I had to keep a straight face. And I was like, oh yeah, you know, you're right. I need to update those. Too many white people. You're absolutely right. I should make them more diverse. Like I had to keep a straight fucking face. I was not happy about it. I was like, I had to drive to San Jose after that. It was like a 3-hour drive, and I was like, God, fucking damn white people in fucking slides. I didn't even have any white people in slides. God damn it. So I was like, I was stewing on that for several hours after that.
Thank you for that, Teresa. We have a wonderful set of links on our website, and I will put that in the chat window. It's a good start, and includes well, James just presented on this morning. It includes nappy.com, and I'm going to guess that Danny and Rachel have other suggestions, but I will look that one up and put it in there, and I think that might be a start.
We have some through our, I'm part of equity-minded practitioners at our college as well, and we have some that we've come across, but I'm always looking for more tools because it is a challenge.
Absolutely. Well, we will, I think we'll move on now to, just because we're coming up on the hour, but Danny and Rachel are still here, and we'll come right back around to them at the end as you think of more questions for them.
No questions.
I did see a few,
of course,
a few more questions.
Oh, okay.
Let's just finish out if we can. And James, the co-lead of OFAR, along with myself and Liz at CCCOER, is going to finish us out here.
Great, thanks, Una. And boy, thank you, Rachel and Danny. Again,
Oh,
sign me
that's
up,
why
Danny.
he
Let
was
me know
simping.
whenever you're
That's
facilitating
why.
a webinar.
That's why.
So we've got more goodness to come. If you missed our webinar last month, it is archived on the CCCOER.
Look at that, Martin. Again, this webinar was a year ago, so these have already happened. African American male education and network development, and whites for racial equity. Stunning and brave.
That was also a
Stunning
terrific webinar,
and brave.
looking at a colleague in political science analyzing her discipline and the lack of representation.
Not a single bit of math was taught in that webinar,
colleague,
by the way.
Talking about anti-racist pedagogical practices.
Not a single bit
practices in the classroom.
of racist math.
In March, we've got a webinar coming up that features two colleagues, one from the African American Male Education and Network Development, AMEND, talking about it's a group of African American males in community college leadership positions who mentor and support African American students in community colleges. Then we have a colleague who's been active in open education, who is part of a group called Whites for Racial Equity, and the group is exactly what the name describes: white people talking the talk and walking the walk for racial equity. So I think that'll be a really interesting perspective. In April, then we have Community College Equity Assessment Lab. Dr. Frank Harris. Many of you are familiar with the work by Luke Wood and Frank Harris. Dr. Harris has agreed to speak with us in April, which will just be fantastic. If you've ever heard him, you know how great he is.
I want to know if there's any questions asked. They said there were more questions.
To be determined. And then June will be an opportunity for the participants in our OFAR cohort to share out some of the great work that they're doing and some of the ideas and discoveries.
Exactly.
So
if no one learns math, then everyone is equally great.
Please.
And isn't that the point? Isn't that the point of all of this? If no one learns math, we've achieved equity. If no one learns math, then we have achieved equity. We have solved racism. We're never going to be able to build buildings or bridges or any of the things that we need to survive as human beings, but we have solved racism. If no one learns math, congratulations.
And the next slide is a little bit more information about the March webinar. Again, AMEND, the organization AMEND. You can see the description there on the screen, and Whites for Racial Equity. The description is on the screen as well. So again, I think that'll be a really interesting.
They've relegated the white man to the end, where he has to do kind of like the cleanup,
doing the work,
but he hasn't done anything important. They've centered the non-white male in the course of this webinar.
And back to you, Una.
All right, next slide, please. Thank you, Liz. I just wanted to mention to all you open educators out there that Open Education Week is week after next, March 1st through 5th. Please submit your wonderful projects there and come and browse projects from around the world. So this is really it's an annual celebration. I think we're in our 8th year. since 2013. People submit really literally from 40 countries around the world in multiple languages. I'd love to see yours there as well. And there's some links here on how you can get involved in other ways. CCCOER will be doing a number of events as well that week. And if you're on our email list, you will hear about them. We'll post a link there to our email list in just a moment. And these are just resources for you that we repeat once again. Our CCCOER, the Community College Consortium for OER's website there. And we also point you to the wonderful resources being put together by our statewide academic senate through their OERI project. And here's the email list if you would like to join that email list and hear about various events during Open Ed Week and,
Oh my God.
and beyond. And I think we're just finishing out now. We do have a survey that we ask you to take. It's a very short.
Okay, I don't think these people have anything else to say. I was waiting for there to be more.
In the chat, thank you, Danny, for addressing some of the comments, and Rachel for adding the.
I guess they're just answering the questions in the chat. So sorry we had to watch that little wrap up, guys. But I hope that you are all as horrified by anti-racist math as I have been in the watching of this session. Now, as a reminder, if this is your first happy hour, we do this every week. We do it on Fridays at 5 p.m. on my second channel, which is what you're watching right now, Actively Unwoke. If you're watching on Odyssey and Rockfin, then you are watching the only channel that I have on either of those platforms. I do everything on those same channels, but if you're on YouTube or watching on my second channel, please make sure you're subscribed. Please make sure you mount that like button. And if you're also inclined, make sure you subscribe to my primary channel as well, which should be in the description below. And if it's not, it's just my name, which is Carlin Burisenko. And I stream live on my primary channel Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Sometimes I talk about the news. Sometimes I have guests. In the next week, we're going to be doing effed up news on Sunday. Don't mind that there's no preview post to my locals. I slacked on the preview post and locals this week, but you can still post for my locals members. You can still post any effed up news you would like, just in a normal post in locals. I will be perusing it in order to pick out some content that we're going to do for effed up news on Sunday. On Monday, we're going to have a regular stream. On Tuesday, I believe, let me just make sure I have my dates correct. On Tuesday, we are going to have Lily Tang Williams join us. On Thursday, we are going to have, I believe it, hang on. I forgot it was February. Yes. On Tuesday, we're going to have Lily Tang Williams, and she's running for Congress in New Hampshire. On Thursday, we're going to have Harrison Kemp, who is running for governor of Maine, so my libertarian counterpart in Maine. And then on Monday and Wednesday, we'll just do our normal news stream. Guys, there's so much news I want to talk about, including the fact that Black Lives Matter's fundraising has shut down. Apparently losing $60 million will result in some ramifications, and Black Lives Matter shut down their fundraising. So I'm sure we'll be talking about that on Effed Up News on Sunday. So you can join that on my main channel. And of course, please make sure, let me just share my screen. Let me share it. Now, earlier I told you that if I get 5 new annual members in my locals community, then I will sign up for this Elementary Teaching for Equity and Justice training series, and I will stream them all. I will stream them all live on my channel for Spy Stream. Because really, if you're going to sign up for it and pay for it, you might as well stream it and at least make some good content. So I still need one more person. One more brave soul who will join my locals community in an annual membership. Whether you're a new member or if you're a monthly member right now, you can upgrade to being a new member. And how you do that is you head over to kb.locals.com/support. Hang on, I'll even get you a little. Oh, there we go. kb.locals.com/support. And you sign up for that annual membership, which is $50 for the entire year. For the whole year. Now, you can also sign up for a monthly membership at $5 a month, but if you sign up for the annual membership, you get 2 months for free. And again, I need one more new member, one more, Or if you want to support my work through a one-time gift as well, you can do that. But I really hope we get that one more member, because I really do want to stream this crazy training series. Dude, look at this. Like, we just sat through anti-racist math. Okay? This is equity in elementary school. Sharpen your radar for missed teachable moments and attempts at equity and inclusion that can actually further marginalized students gain a treasure trove of resources for reimagining elementary education and pedagogy. Guys, let's make this happen. I know one of you can do it. Just need one more. I'll be paying attention. Hopefully we get it. But if we don't, I'll probably end up buying it anyway. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. I'm definitely going to do it if I get one more. But also make sure you pre-order my book, Actively Unwoke. It's currently available for pre-order on Amazon and all sorts of the other places. If you want to pick that up, you can head over to activelyunwoke.com. Sign up for some webinars we got there. That's all I got, guys. 7:30 at night. I've had a long day. I'm going to go hang out with Victor. Spend some time with the husband, make sure he's taken care of. But guys, I will see you on Sunday. Oh, Emily L in for the win, sliding in there. Thank you, Emily L. So we will be doing equity in elementary education. Hopefully they don't kick me out. It is entirely possible. Let's just be honest. It is entirely possible that once they figure out that I'm streaming, I'll sign up under a fake name. So they're going to have to figure out who's me, right? But like, they might figure out that I'm streaming and kick me out of the program. Like, let's just be honest. That could happen. We all need to be prepared for that. But I will do my best. I'll sign up under a fake identity. I'll be like, my camera doesn't work. I can't turn on my camera. It doesn't work. I knew we'd get there. Thank you guys for the support. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you, Emily, for upgrading. We salute you, Emily. All right, guys, that's all I've got for this one. I will see you guys on Sunday for F'd Up News of the Week on my main channel. Have a great rest of your Friday. Take care, and we'll see you soon.